Hello, so creative, is Faustina here. Welcome to another interesting tutorial. On today's tutorial we are going to learn how to cut and sew this beautiful blazer that you are seeing on the screen. It's actually my first time of making blazer and it came out so nice. I'm loving the outcome of this blazer. So if it's something that you would like to watch, grab your seat and popcorn and let's get straight into it. So I've already uploaded the drafting and cutting of this blazer. This particular episode is for the sewing of this blazer. So if you have not watched the cutting and drafting of the blazer, you will like to go over to my channel and watch the part 1 before you proceed in watching this sewing part, so that you don't get confused on the patterns that we are using on this sewing part. This particular pattern is for the back pattern. I've already added 1.5 inch sewing allowance and half inches all around our drafted pattern. We are making use of shoulder darts techniques, and this particular pattern is for the back. So what we are basically going to do is to start joining all our cutout patterns. So our center back is on slit as well. We slanted our center back, and I'm going to remove all the patterns so that we can start joining all our cutout patterns. So like I said earlier, you have to watch the drafting part so that you understand what we are doing so easily. So I'm going to start pinning down the shoulder darts of the back. After pinning the shoulder dart of the back, you can see me pinning it. So watch closely and see how I pin down all our patterns. So this is for the one side of the back. I'm also going to pin the second side of the back before we now pin the center of our back. After pinning this other side, we are going to now proceed in pinning the center, because our back is one. There is no slit at the center of our back. I'm going to pin the center back of our beautiful blazer. So after pinning it, I'm going to move over to my sewing machine and go and run a stitch on all this our pin pattern. And this is for the front. You can see how beautiful the front is looking as well. And we are going to also pin down our pattern. I'm going to remove all our pattern and also pin it down. I also went ahead to cut out the lining as well, and the lining is 1 inch shorter than our main fabric. I'm going to go ahead and pin the shoulder dart area. After pinning the right side, I'm also going to pin the left side and move over to my sewing machine to go and run a stitch on the both front. The center front is open, so you will run a stitch on the both fronts. And I've gone ahead to run a stitch. The next thing I did is to iron press open all the seams, and I also went ahead to trim out the excess of the seams, and I did it on both sides and also on the back. The next thing we are going to do now is to join the shoulders. So we are going to match the front shoulder to the back shoulder like so, and we are going to go ahead and pin it down and also match the other part and also pin it down. Remember, the front is overlapping blazer, they lap each other. So after pinning both the shoulder and the side, I went ahead to mark out the 1.5 inches allowance we added for the side. So I'm going to mark it on the both sides. You can see that the front is lapping each other, and I'm also basically going to do the same thing on the lining part. The same thing I did on this our main fabric, I'm going to do it on the lining part. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and go and run a stitch both on the shoulder and also on the side, and I will do the same thing to the lining so that we can go ahead and start turning our blazer with our lining. And I will advise you get a cotton lining for your blazer so that your blazer will be looking so sweet. So this is the lining part. Like I said earlier, I have also joined it, and I'm going to join the side and the shoulder as well. So I've already gone ahead to join our blazer shoulder and the side and also the lining. So we are going to start turning the lining from the center front and also the hem part of our beautiful blazer. So you can see that the right side of the lining is matching the right side of our blazer, and I'm going to start sewing from the hem part. And after sewing the hem part, I'm also going to sew the center front of our blazer. And after pinning it down, I'm going to move over to my sewing machine and go and run a stitch on the hem part and also on the center front of our blazer, that place that is going to lap each other. We are going to use lining to turn it, and also on the hem part. So this is the part I'm talking about, which is the center front. Yeah, we are going to go ahead and run a stitch. That part that I'm pinning now is the lapping part that is going to lap on each other at the center front of this our beautiful blazer. And I've gone ahead to run a stitch on it. You can see it, both the center front and the hem part. You can see it's looking pretty. The next thing you're going to do is to top stitch that center front before you now flip your lining to the wrong side of our blazer, like so. When make sure I stop stitch and iron press that center part that is going to lap each other very well. And the place we are going to use to secure our lining is at the shoulder, and also at that place that is going to carry our lapel, which is the V center front we marks, which is our lapel. So I know if you have not watched the drafting part, you will not understand the sewing part. So it's best you watch the drafting part before you move over to the sewing part. So I'm trying to pin both the shoulder and our center front lapel part so that we can sew the lining or keep the lining in place before we start measuring how our lapel, like the length of our lapel. So after pinning down the lining to the neck, which is from the V neck all over to the back and to the next center front, I'm going to go ahead and sew it with my sewing machine to keep the lining in place, and also go ahead and iron every part of the blazer so that we can start working on the lapel part. So I've gone ahead to iron press every seam. You can see how pretty it's looking. Yep. So we are going to start working on that extra flow that was in front of our blazer. So I use our cutout pattern and I extended it by 4 inches, and this is our cutout pattern, which runs from the shoulder dart. You can see it runs from the center of our blazer to the shoulder dart, and I extended it by 4 inches because like the flow was above my blazer length. If you want this flow to be, the width to be bigger than the actual width of your center front, you can go ahead and extend it, because the one we replicated was larger, the width was a bit larger. But because we are managing our fabric, like I said, if you want to replicate yours, make sure you get 4 years, complete 4 years. If you are the bigger size, you can get 4.5, so that you don't have to manage your fabric. So I was managing my fabric, so I had to do my this late sew. But after cutting, we are going to go ahead and run a stitch from our V. Like, we are not going to run a stitch on the V, but this place I'm notching now is the part that we are going to run a stitch on. So I'm moving over to my sewing machine to go and run a stitch on it. And after running a stitch on it, I'm going to tell you what we are going to do next. I've gone ahead to run a stitch on it. I'm trimming out all the excess that we have. So after trimming it out, we are going to turn it to the right side and go over to our ironing table and go and iron press it very well so that it will relax very well before we start joining it on our blazer. I will now move over to my ironing table and go and iron press it. So this is the blazer. This is how you join it with the blazer. From the V, which is where our lapel is going to stop, we are going to pin it down. From that V, we are going to start spinning it down, which is the center front of our beautiful blazer. We are going to open up the shoulder because the flow also went inside the shoulder. So I went ahead to rip off the already sewn shoulder of the part that we are going to put in the flow, And after ripping it off, I'm going to go ahead and keep pinning down. I will move over to my sewing machine to go and run a stitch on it, and I will come and show you the outcome. I've gone ahead to run a stitch on that V, which is where our lapel is going to sit. You can see how pretty it's looking. And the next thing we are going to do is to measure all around our neck now, and I also went ahead to sew back the shoulder all around our neck so that we can go ahead and cut out our front lapel. You can see me measuring it from that V. You measure all around your neck, both from the front, center front, to the back, to the next center front. After getting the value, the next thing we are going to do is go over to our left out fabric, fold it into two. You are going to cut it on fold. You fold it into two, and we are going to measure the length that we measured from our blazer, and we add extra 1 inch sewing allowance. And after measuring it, we are going to fold it into 2 equal halves. So I'm trying to measure what I have from the measurements we measure all around the neck of our blazer, and I'm going to fold it into 2 to get the midpoint of the lapel. And the midpoint is going to be the larger part of the lapel. The lapel is a slanty lapel, and the midpoint is going to be 4.5 inches, and while the middle part is going to be like the middle part that I just find out now is going to be 3.5, while the smallest part is meant to be 1.5. I don't know why I marked 3. It's supposed to be 1.5, latest 1, because that part is small. It's meant to be small. So after cutting this particular part, I also went ahead to trim it out to 1.5 off camera. So I urge you to reduce yours to 1.5. Don't do yours 3 inches, because that part is meant to be slim, very slim. And this is it. So after cutting it, I'm going to notch the middle part. After notching the middle part, I'm also going to bring in my blazer and also indicate the middle part of my blazer, which is the middle back neck. And we are going to sew from the middle back neck to the front, center front, and also sew from the middle back neck to the other center front. But before you sew it, you are going to go ahead and run a stitch on the ending part, which is this part. And after running a stitch on it, we are going to turn it to the right side. I went ahead to trim out the excess a little bit, and you're going to turn it to the right side. And after turning it to the right side, we now start sewing it on our blazer. So I'm going to fold it back and fold the middle part and bring in our blazer from. I'm going to start sewing from the inside, so that after sewing for the inside, we are going to now flip it to the right side. After pinning it down, I'm heading over to my sewing machine to go and run a stitch from one center. After pinning it down from the center back to the center front of our beautiful blazer, I'm going to go ahead and sew it. So I'm going ahead to sew it, and the next thing you should do is to notch it. After notching it, you top stitch that lapel to the lining part. I'm going to top stitch it to the lining part like so. I'm going to top stitch it to the lining part, and after top stitching it, I'm going to trim out the excess like so. So I'm going to trim out the excess to the nearest minimum, to the smallest minimum. After trimming it out, we are going to now flip it to the right side like so. This is how it's gonna be to the right side. You see how pretty our lapel is looking. This is how it's gonna look once you turn it to the right side. And our lapel has come together. It's mending the sleeve. So I have a well detailed tutorial on how you can cut your basic sleeve and also sew it to your blazer jacket. For this part, we are not doing the sleeve part. So the next thing you are going to do is to iron press every part, and also tacking your pressing bottle on that center front that is slapping each other, so that you can easily open and also close that center front. Don't leave it open. Tacking your pressing button, and this is the end of our beautiful tutorial. See you in my next one.